You never juiced? Were you able to get that way on your own?
Yeah, absolutely. I started working out when I was 12 years old.
What's up, guys? Derek, moreplates.com. Today we're going to be talking about what I think John Cena probably takes to what he built his physique on and what he currently maintains it on.
From the get-go, we can already see that Cena had absurdly good genetics. Like at 16, this guy already has an appreciable amount of muscle mass on him. Just looks like a stereotypical jock. Like, look at this guy's neck. It's fucking ridiculous. Moving forward to 18, this guy has already surpassed 99% of gym goers' physiques with ease. Like, that's not even a question. This guy's arms are already better than guys I see who have been competing at regional level shows their entire lives. There's no doubt that his genetic response to training, diet, in general is next level, like 0.0001% genetics here. And once he hits 19, this picture is circulated around as being him at 18 as well as him being 19. I don't know what age it is, but it doesn't really matter. Like here, it's pretty obvious that there's almost no 19-year-old that even comes to mind that is even close to this, with the exception of a few, other genetic phenoms who are actually IFBB pro bodybuilders that I'm aware of. Moving forward to 20 years old, this guy's already packed on what appears to be maybe like 2/3 to 3/4 of the amount of mass that he's accumulated over the course of his career. So just a substantial amount of muscle gain from 16 to 20. It looks almost like 70 pounds of muscle, to be honest. Like, this guy went from being a skinny dude to being well built to being just a freak show at 20 years old. Like, he's probably 60 to 70 pounds heavier here of what appears to be majorly lean tissue. And going forward to 21, this guy's competing in his first bodybuilding show. Actually, I don't know if this is his first one, but this is the one that everyone always references, and looks great. Like, this is his first show, and this is top quality genetics at its finest, to be honest. Like, I think he could have gone far as a bodybuilder if he continued with it. And, well, I'm assuming, didn't really see his placing or anything, but just look at what this guy looks like. I think, there's no really reading into it that you have to do to see that this is, like, I would argue that his physique is, like, the peak of his career, like, right here. And he's only supposedly 21 years old here, and just a nut side chest, like, IFBB pro quality nowadays, to be honest. Like, you have guys turning pro with far less impressive physiques than this. And I don't know how far he took the bodybuilding thing, but it goes without saying this guy was just mutated from the beginning. And was this a result of gear? I think he adamantly argues that he is natural, and there was an article that came out in 2009 where perhaps they misinterpreted what he said a bit, but the title was WWE John Cena thinks steroid users should go to jail. And he's quoted as saying what happened with Alex Rodriguez and the steroids revelation sickened him. He thinks if everyone really wants to get serious about cleaning up the game, they should send the guys to jail. Actually, this is clearly paraphrased, but Cena is about as cut as they come, but he said he's not steroid enhanced. I'm not only a guy who will say I'm clean, but I'll beat my chest to the world that I'm clean, he said. I have very, very strong opinions on that. So perhaps he just has a strong opinion about the use of it in sport to gain a competitive advantage over people in a cheating way, as opposed to just using it in general. It's not really clear by the statement, but evidently he claims natural, and he's actually stated in interviews before that he's natural several times.
You never juiced? Were you able to get that way on your own?
Yeah, absolutely. I started working out when I was 12 years old.
Because you got beat up a lot, right?
Exactly.
Is that true?
I was really just
pencil neck geek?
Yeah, and it was a true comic book story.
So obviously anything but a pencil neck after he started working out. This guy's like the stereotypical jock look, and just cranked out of his mind from a very early age. Like, this easily gained over probably 30 to 40 pounds of muscle in his first couple of years, if not more. And whether this is achieved naturally, I don't think it's even a question that, well, I'm going to insert my opinion here. I do not think it was natural. I don't think anyone could support this level of lean muscle accrual in such a short time frame naturally, even like genetic freaks, perhaps somebody like a Ronnie Coleman or a Kai Green, but John Cena, I just don't see it in the cards. I think he is enhanced and has been since, probably like 18 years old, to be honest. And whether that's true or not, who really knows at the end of the day, but as far as what I think he took over the course of his career, his physique really hasn't changed substantially. He's always maintained more or less the same level of muscularity. Perhaps on the scale, he's gained a bit more weight over the latter decade of his career, but more or less throughout his career, he's kind of fluctuated between 10 and 15% body fat, what it looks like, and sporting about the same level of muscularity for probably the majority of it, with his overall muscularity slightly increasing as the years progress. So if anything, he's gotten more muscular, closing in on the tail of his wrestling career. And, I believe his physique looked best at 21 when he was preparing for that bodybuilding competition, but that's more likely than not just the level of leanness he achieved, which he doesn't seem to have in the years following. But the same level of muscularity is shown for, the next 15, 20 years here almost. So even now, looking at his physique nowadays, like, if anything, he's just improved since, as far as muscle growth. You can argue whether his physique looks better or worse, but he's definitely not smaller. If anything, he's gained size over the years. And even going into his 40s, this guy's, some of these pictures are filtered and he just worked out, and, the lighting and everything is just on point. So he looks a lot leaner than he probably actually is. But, there's really no regression. This guy's just been on, trending upwards for the majority of his career. And is it sustainable naturally? Is it even achievable naturally? No, I don't think so, at least in my opinion. And what I think he took in particular, I think he's probably experimented with pretty much everything. Like, anyone who's really deep into bodybuilding and the sport knows about the deep rabbit hole of pharmacology and all the things that guys do to prepare for shows and bulk up and get shredded and get that kind of cosmetic look that is just unachievable otherwise. And for somebody like John, who, prides himself on his physique and has to look as crazy as possible for pretty much everything he does is based around him being a huge jacked, stereotypical jock kind of guy. I think he's probably dabbled with pretty much everything. I wouldn't doubt that he's used testosterone. I wouldn't doubt he's used DECA. I wouldn't doubt that he's used D-bol. I wouldn't doubt that he's used Tren. I wouldn't doubt that he's used GH, insulin, everything, you name it. However, I think what he uses currently is probably a lot different than what he used throughout his younger years to achieve his physique, because as you probably already know, if you've seen my other content, that achieving a physique is a lot more difficult than sustaining it. Like, you can sustain a significant amount of mass with just what would be considered, sport level TRT, or athlete TRT, whatever you want to call it, the guys who are pushing their testosterone levels above or right on the threshold of the upper end of the reference range, where it's not exactly representative of would be therapeutic at that point, because it's essentially creating a level that you would not otherwise be achieving naturally. Now, with that being said, what do I think he takes now to sustain his current physique? I think as anyone gets into their 40s, especially guys who are fans of bodybuilding, watch the bodybuilding world closely, I'm sure John has seen all the guys, that he idolized from the 70s, 80s, all the guys. Not a lot of them, but, there's every few weeks or so you hear a new story of some, legend or somebody with a prominent presence in the industry dropping dead from, just the extreme stress of carrying the amount of lean tissue that they walk around with year round, as well as, drug abuse. And I doubt John is a stranger to the risks. I'm sure he's well aware of what he's putting his body at risk of by walking around, north of 240, 250 pounds lean nearly year round. This is why I tend to lean towards assuming that most of these guys who do retain a significant amount of mass in their 40 plus age bracket, that they're on what would be considered, high-end athlete level TRT, perhaps 200 milligrams, 250 milligrams a week. And then, an anti-aging quote unquote dose of GH of 1 to 2 IUs per day, something like that, to achieve a bit more intracellular hydration, intramuscular fullness, kind of get that cosmetic look that cannot really be achieved otherwise in terms of a fullness aspect. And on paper, 2 IUs is touted as being an anti-aging dose, when in reality it's probably closer to 0.5 to 1 unit. But with that being said, I'm sure he's probably using pharmacy grade 200 to 300 milligrams of test per week with a couple IUs of GH, and then I wouldn't be surprised if he sprinkles in a bit of Nandrolone here and there. In the anti-aging clinics in the States, it's not uncommon for these doctors, quote-unquote, doctors, to prescribe, pharmacy-grade testosterone, growth hormone, and then as well as prescribe Nandrolone decanoate. This is actually pretty common practice. I'll hear a lot of my friends from the U.S. talking about how they easily got a prescription for 300 tests, 200 to 300 DECA, and then GH. And to me, that's like a fairly decent cycle, to be honest. Like that, to me, would be a big blast phase. But the layman or somebody who's just perhaps doesn't research this stuff as deeply as I do, or doesn't realize how strong these drugs really are, that's seen as a therapeutic dose nowadays. Like you have guys blasting upwards of, 2 grams of tests and 2 grams of this, 700 milligrams of tren, all this crazy shit. And, therapeutic TRT is now more or less seen in anti-aging scopes as, 200 milligrams plus minimum of weekly gear. And then, on top of that, sometimes DECA is thrown on top of that, GH is thrown on top of that, etc. So as far as, from the health conscious or the more health conscious 40 plus year old, I highly doubt anyone's walking around at 250 lean like John, where he's pushing his 40s and he knows the stress it has on his body. He's probably not going to be using any risky compounds anymore. He doesn't need to gain any additional mass. He's just trying to sustain what he has at this point, if not lean down in certain token situations. I believe he's probably using what would be interpreted by many as bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, using a high-end dose of TRT, quote-unquote, GH, and a bit of nandrolone sprinkled in there here and there for, especially as a wrestler, for joint support. I can't imagine him not using nandrolone at some point throughout the later years of his wrestling career, and perhaps even moving forward into his 40s. So anyways, take from that what you will. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Drop a like, helps the algorithm when you guys comment and like, so I really appreciate when you guys do that. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell. Check me out on Instagram, follow me there at moreplates_more dates, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, etc. Talk to you guys soon.